About 320 million years ago, insects roamed the earth that were far larger than any of their modern relatives. The sky teemed with giant dragonflies with broad wings, and the dense forests were home to huge centipedes, large scorpions, and other strange creatures. A warm climate, plentiful vegetation, and high oxygen levels allowed these animals to reach astonishing sizes. This was long before dinosaurs appeared, when insects were already among the most successful life forms on land and in the air. Their fossils give us valuable clues about a world of unusual animals, major environmental changes, and the early evolution of life that shaped the nature we see today. By the time these giant insects existed, Earth had already passed through many important stages, gradually reshaping its surface, atmosphere, seas, and the organisms living there. In those remote ages, the world looked completely unlike the Earth we know now. There were no people, no birds, no flowering plants, no mammals, no dinosaurs. Land, oceans, and air kept changing under natural forces that began when the planet formed. These transformations lasted for millions of years. Simple organisms became more complex, and conditions slowly prepared the way for larger plants and animals. At the very start of Earth's history, its surface was extremely hot, covered by molten rock. Volcanoes were highly active, spewing massive amounts of gases into the sky. The atmosphere then was unsuitable for animal respiration. It was dominated by carbon dioxide, water vapor, methane, ammonia, and nitrogen, with little or no oxygen. The sky would have looked very different because the mix of gases and particles was unlike today's. Over time, the planet's outer layer cooled and solidified into rock. Long periods of rain collected water in low-lying areas, forming the first oceans, while rivers carried water across the land into the growing seas. These oceans became the cradle of the earliest living things. Scientists think the simplest life arose in water because the seas offered a more stable environment than the harsh surface, with its intense sunlight, temperature swings, and exposure to harmful radiation. The earliest life forms were tiny organisms that could be seen only with special equipment. They lacked bones, shells, or complex bodies. They multiplied and gradually spread throughout the oceans. Some obtained energy from dissolved chemicals, while others later learned to harvest sunlight through photosynthesis. This process slowly altered the atmosphere as the byproduct oxygen became available. The first oxygen-producing organisms did not instantly flood the air with oxygen. Much of it reacted with iron and other substances in the seas and rocks. These reactions continued for many millions of years until more and more oxygen began to accumulate in the atmosphere. The gradual rise of oxygen dramatically reshaped the planet. Ancient organisms that could not survive in an oxygen-rich world gradually vanished, making way for newer forms of life that extracted energy from food more efficiently. As oxygen levels rose high above the planet's surface, another crucial transformation occurred. Oxygen molecules combined to create ozone. This ozone accumulated in the upper atmosphere, forming a layer that blocked a large share of the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation. With this shielding in place, living beings gained a better chance of surviving outside the water, although true colonization of the land would come much later. For an enormous stretch of time, almost all life remained confined to the oceans. Tiny creatures drifted with the currents or settled on the seabed. Over millions of years, some of these organisms developed more intricate structures. Individual cells started to group together, forming larger assemblies with specialized body parts that each performed a particular function. This organizational shift allowed life to diversify dramatically. The seas became populated by countless varieties of organisms. The first animals were soft-bodied, and later some of them grew hard outer coverings or simple skeletons. These new structures offered protection and support. Small marine animals crawled along the bottom, swam in the deep, or buried themselves in mud. As diversity grew, so did the range of feeding strategies. Meanwhile, the planet's crust was far from static. Massive rock blocks, known as tectonic plates, drifted slowly across the surface. Though their motion was extremely gradual, over millions of years it reshaped continents and oceans. Land masses linked together, split apart, and shifted to new positions. Where plates collided, mountains thrust upward. Where one plate sank beneath another, deep basins formed. Volcanoes kept spewing gases, renewing the atmosphere with fresh air. Weather sculpted the terrain. Rain eroded mountains and swept rock debris into rivers, which carried silt, sand, and small stones to lakes and seas. Wind pushed loose soil across arid zones, and waves gradually reshaped coastlines. These forces acted day after day through countless generations, steadily transforming the Earth. In those early ages, the climate was highly variable. Some intervals were warmer, others colder, and at times large portions of the planet were cloaked in ice. At other moments, most of the world remained warm. Climate was driven by volcanic activity, the movement of continents, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and the arrangement of land and sea. Living creatures had to adapt to these shifts or face extinction. Long before the rise of giant animals, plants had not yet covered the dry land, and the continents were mostly bare rock, loose soil, and sand. Rivers cut through empty valleys, and strong winds swept across open spaces. Without large vegetation, the land looked nothing like the later world, where vast territories would be blanketed by forests. The first organisms to attempt a foothold on land were tiny life forms, some bacteria and simple algae, that inhabited humid niches where water collected. Early communities spread raw stones over the ground, creating bare surfaces. Over time, they altered the soil, breaking rock into finer particles, and thin layers of soil began to appear. Mushrooms started to play a key role, decomposing dead matter and returning nutrients to the environment. Some mushrooms formed close relationships with the early plants, helping the plants absorb water and minerals more efficiently. In exchange, the mushrooms received the organic material produced by the plants. These symbiotic partnerships became essential for life in drier habitats. The first land plants were simple. They had no flowers, no seeds, and no deep roots like many modern species. They stayed near moist areas because they needed water to reproduce. Their bodies remained small and low to the ground, and little by little they colonized damp soils, riverbanks, and shallow swamps. As they gained a foothold on land, plants began to change their surroundings. Their roots held the soil in place, and dead plant debris accumulated on the surface, slowly making the ground more fertile. Thanks to these changes, it became easier for new plants to grow, and where bare rock had once dominated, a green cover gradually emerged. Soon after plants colonized the land, small animals appeared. Many of these early terrestrial animals descended from ocean-dwelling ancestors. To survive away from water, they faced many problems. They had to breathe air, avoid drying out, find food, and reproduce. Natural selection gradually favored individuals whose traits helped them live on land. Among the first successful land animals were the ancestors of modern arthropods. These ancestors gave rise to insects, spiders, scorpions, and many other creatures with a hard exoskeleton and jointed legs. Their waterproof outer layer reduced water loss, strong legs enabled movement on land, and their small bodies required less food than larger organisms. At first, these early arthropods were tiny. They lived among simple plants, moist soil, and fallen debris. Many fed on decaying organic matter, mushrooms, or tiny organisms, while others became hunters of even smaller prey. As new plants and animals appeared, these early food connections gradually grew more complex. Throughout these vast eras, the atmosphere kept changing. Oxygen levels rose slowly as plants and algae continuously produced it through photosynthesis. This increase unfolded over millions of years and was gradual. The atmospheric oxygen content never stayed constant. It rose and fell over time depending on the balance between plant growth and decay, fires, volcanic activity, and other natural processes. In the early stages of terrestrial development, extensive forests had not yet formed. Most plants remained low and simple. Gradually, new groups emerged with stronger stems and efficient internal water transport systems. These adaptations allowed plants to grow taller and thrive farther from permanent water sources. New forms of vegetation spread across broader territories. The rise of taller plants created new habitats for animals. Their leaves supplied food, their stems offered shelter, and the moist soil beneath them stayed cooler and retained water more effectively. Leaves and stems piled up, forming thick layers of organic matter where tiny creatures could take shelter. This buildup enriched the surroundings, allowing ever more forms of life to thrive. In the oceans, evolution kept marching on. Fish grew increasingly varied. Some sprouted jaws that made seizing food easier, while others reinforced their fins, gaining stronger swimming power. Coral colonies offered refuge to countless animals, and mollusks, worms, and other marine beings spread across many oceanic zones. Over countless ages, these marine ecosystems grew ever more intricate. Certain fish with tougher fins ventured confidently into shallower waters. In swampy regions where water levels rose and fell with the seasons, such ability proved advantageous. Across many generations, subtle traits appeared in individual fish that later helped their descendants crawl onto dry land. This transition unfolded through innumerable tiny adjustments, not through any sudden leap. As plant life spread, the land turned greener. Moss-like growth was soon joined by taller species bearing simple stems. Eventually, plants evolved vascular tissues that moved water and nutrients far more efficiently, enabling them to attain far greater sizes. When plants died in waterlogged swamps, the slow decay allowed thick layers of plant debris to accumulate year after year. In some locales, those layers turned into peat, and after deep burial, compression, and heating over millions of years, they transformed into coal. Ancient coal seams now serve as key clues about the world before giant insects became common. The expanding vegetation also reshaped the atmosphere. Plants drew carbon dioxide from the air and released oxygen. As forests spread, this exchange altered the balance of gases overhead. Though many forces influence atmospheric makeup, the surge of plant cover played a decisive role in creating conditions that later supported a wide array of animal life. Early insects had not yet come to dominate the drier lands. Their ancestors were merely forming the crucial features that would eventually let them colonize diverse habitats. The first winged forms had not yet appeared. True flight emerged much later, opening entirely new possibilities for finding food, escaping predators, seeking mates, and settling new territories. Vast stretches of the continents were wet wetlands. Rivers frequently burst their banks, creating swamps and small ponds. In this damp environment, lush vegetation thrived. Fallen branches and rotting leaves piled up, mushrooms sprouted, and the moist soil provided perfect homes for tiny arthropods and other simple land creatures. Over time, such places became essential hotspots for insect evolution. The Earth's continents kept drifting slowly. New mountain chains rose while older ones wore down through erosion. Sea levels rose and fell as climate shifts and tectonic forces reshaped ocean basins. For millions of years, coastlines retreated inland, then surged back toward the sea. Each alteration forged a fresh environment, and living beings either adapted to it or vanished. Even before the age of giant insects, the world was in constant motion. Air, land, seas, climate, plants, and animals kept changing under natural forces, stretching across vast stretches of time. As forests grew, conditions slowly shifted, eventually allowing gigantic trees to arise. The amount of oxygen in the atmosphere kept rising, and early arthropods took advantage of the increasingly green landscapes. The Carboniferous period started about 359 million years ago and ended roughly 299 million years ago. It stands as one of the most significant chapters in Earth's history because the continents, oceans, and atmosphere all underwent major transformations during that span. For a long stretch, immense forests covered large portions of the world, spreading in peace. The air held far more oxygen than it does today, and many life forms grew larger and more successful. Among the most famous creatures of that age were giant insects that lived in forests, swamps, rivers, and low-lying marshes. Their size has long amazed scientists and nature enthusiasts, especially when compared with today's comparatively tiny insects. The Carboniferous created the conditions that allowed these animals to reach dimensions that seem almost unimaginable now. At the beginning of the Carboniferous, the continents drifted slowly across the planet's surface, riding on the massive plates beneath them. Much of the land lay near the equator, where a warm climate persisted and abundant rain fell. Large rivers cut across the terrain, filling low areas and turning them into swamps and marshlands. Because of heavy precipitation and a generally flat landscape, water lingered for long periods. Almost the entire surface was blanketed by dense vegetation, forming some of the largest forests ever seen on the planet. These forests differed greatly from modern ones. Flowering plants had not yet appeared. Instead, the ground was covered with towering club mosses, horsetails, ferns, seed ferns, and early trees. Some club mosses towered over 30 meters high, and giant horsetails also reached impressive heights. Ferns carpeted the forest floor and filled open spaces with thick green foliage, creating a canopy so dense that little sunlight reached the ground below. When leaves fell, branches broke and plants died. They accumulated in the moist soil, gradually building thick layers. The damp conditions slowed the decay of the dead material. A large portion of the plant matter did not decompose completely. Instead, it became buried beneath water and silt. Over millions of years, heat and pressure transformed these remains into coal. This process gave the period its name, as the abundant coal seams we mine today were formed back then. The atmosphere of the Carboniferous was also unlike today's. Scientists estimate that, at certain times, oxygen made up about 35% of the air, whereas now it accounts for roughly 21%. The massive forests released enormous amounts of oxygen through photosynthesis, while much of the carbon from dead plants stayed locked in the ground instead of returning to the sky. As a result, oxygen levels stayed high for a long interval. Such high oxygen concentrations had a noticeable effect on insects. Unlike mammals, birds, and reptiles, insects breathe through tiny openings on the sides of their bodies. These openings connect to a network of thin tracheal tubes that deliver air directly to their tissues, allowing them to thrive in an oxygen-rich environment. Oxygen seeped straight into an insect's body through tiny openings in its exoskeleton. This kind of breathing works fine for small creatures, but as an animal gets bigger, the system becomes less efficient. During the Carboniferous period, the atmosphere contained a lot more oxygen, so the gas could reach every part of an insect's body more easily. That extra oxygen let some species grow to sizes far beyond those of any modern insects. Another factor that helped these giants thrive was the lack of flying birds. Birds had not yet appeared, and the skies were not yet filled with fast-moving aerial predators. As a result, large flying insects faced far fewer dangers while searching for food or mates. Although other animals did hunt insects, skilled aerial hunters were far scarcer than they would become millions of years later. One of the most famous Carboniferous insects was Meganeura. This ancient relative of today's dragonflies boasted a wingspan of roughly 75 centimeters, making it one of the largest flying insects ever recorded. Meganeura possessed a long body, sturdy wings, and huge compound eyes that were perfect for spotting prey. It hovered over rivers, lakes, and swamps teeming with small fish and other aquatic life. It also captured other insects and tiny creatures, snatching them with powerful legs tipped with sharp spines. Once a victim was caught, Meganeura ripped it apart with a strong mouth part, relying entirely on its keen eyesight. Its massive compound eyes contained thousands of tiny lenses that together recorded movement, allowing the insect to detect prey even while it was in flight. Rapid speed and sudden changes of direction helped Meganeura intercept anything trying to flee. Scientists think that most of Meganeura's life was spent near fresh water, because its larvae probably developed underwater before emerging as adults. The young forms of this dragonfly-like insect looked quite different from the adults. They lived beneath the water's surface, hunting small animals. As they grew, they shed their outer hair repeatedly, eventually climbing onto plants that rose above the water. When the final layer was shed, an adult emerged with soft wings that hardened over time. After a brief rest, the newly fledged insect took to the air, flying over the surrounding forest. Meganeura was not the only giant arthropod of that era. Another remarkable creature was Arthropleura. Though not an insect, it was a close relative of modern millipedes and ranks among the largest land invertebrates ever to exist. Some individuals stretched longer than 2 meters. Its body was made up of many linked segments, each protected by a hard outer shell, and it moved across the forest floor on countless legs. Researchers believe Arthropleura mainly fed on dead plant material, fallen leaves, and other organic debris. Fossil tracks show it traversed soft, swampy ground, suggesting it spent much of its time digging through thick layers of decaying vegetation. The ancient forests supplied an enormous amount of plant matter, so food was plentiful. Many other insects reached impressive sizes as well. Giant mayflies skimmed over rivers and lakes, ancient cockroaches roamed the forest floor, and large relatives of grasshoppers, crickets, and beetles also appeared. Some of these species chewed on plants, others hunted tiny animals, and still others processed dead organic matter on the forest floor. Coal forests hosted an astonishing variety of life because, even within a relatively limited area, they contained many neighboring habitats with different conditions. Tall trees made up the canopy level, while their dense foliage blocked a large share of the sunlight. Beneath them, low-lying plants carpeted the damp ground. Pools, streams, fallen trunks, and rushing banks offered countless niches for animals. Every portion of the forest supplied both food and shelter. For most of the Carboniferous, much of the region enjoyed a warm climate. Heavy rain filled the rivers and fed the swamps. Thick woods held moisture in the soil, allowing water to spread slowly across the landscape and create ideal conditions for plant growth. Because insects relied on plants for nutrition, directly or indirectly, these forests supported massive insect populations. Rapid breeding caused their numbers to swell quickly, with many species laying huge clutches of eggs. When food was plentiful, the young often grew fast, and the different stages of their life cycles lessened competition, as larvae and adults sometimes ate different things or lived in different places. This division helped more individuals survive. Insects possessed a hard outer shell that offered essential protection, supported their bodies, reduced water loss, and provided a sturdy anchor for muscles. Strong legs let many species climb vegetation, burrow into soft ground, or seize prey. The evolution of wings opened new possibilities. Insects could travel long distances, escape danger, and seek mates. Yet insects were not the only animals thriving in the Carboniferous. Amphibians flourished near rivers, ponds, and swamps. Some grew to considerable size and preyed on fish or small terrestrial creatures. During the same interval, true reptiles first appeared. Unlike amphibians, reptiles laid eggs encased in a protective shell, allowing them to reproduce away from water, a crucial innovation that let them colonize new environments. Spiders, scorpions, and other relatives of modern arachnids also inhabited the forests. Some stalked insects, hiding beneath plants or inside fallen trunks. Others waited motionless for prey to approach. Their presence added further richness to the coal forest ecosystem. Each habitat supported many forms of life. The oceans of that era teemed with fish, sharks, mollusks, and other marine creatures. Warm, shallow seas hosted coral communities, while sea lilies covered the sea floor, filtering tiny food particles from the water. Although giant insects mainly occupied drier lands, the state of the seas remained linked to the planet's overall climate and environment. Seasonal shifts affected different regions, yet most of the world stayed warm. In some places, flood periods were followed by receding water levels, causing rivers to alter their courses, carve new swampy areas, and abandon old ones. Forests gradually claimed these fresh habitats, bringing insects and other animals along. Scientists learn about Carboniferous insects from fossils. Their remains appear in rocks that formed from ancient river channels, lake deposits, and swamp sediments. Some fossils preserve wings with intricate vein patterns. Others reveal whole bodies, showing legs, eyes, mouthparts, and body segments. Even footprints and trackways give clues about how individual animals moved across the ground. Scientists investigate these discoveries using the latest tools. By taking ultra-high-resolution photographs, performing precise measurements, and employing scanning equipment, they can examine details that are virtually invisible to the naked eye. When fossils from distant locations are compared, researchers begin to map how various species spread across the ancient continents and how they evolved over time. The first scientists were astonished to uncover gigantic insects, because today's species rarely grow to such enormous proportions. As more specimens were found, the proof of these huge creatures grew stronger. Complete wings of Meganeura, sizable fragments of Arthropleura bodies, and numerous other remnants demonstrated that the Carboniferous world hosted animals far larger than their modern relatives. Modern researchers still seek an explanation for why such giant insects later vanished. A primary factor appears to be the gradual decline in atmospheric oxygen after the end of the Carboniferous period. Climate change also played a role, reshaping forests and giving rise to new predators. As ecosystems shifted, the colossal insects became increasingly rare, while smaller forms proved better suited to the new conditions. The Carboniferous era also experienced significant geological activity. Slow tectonic movements and collisions raised mountain ranges on the continents, altering patterns of rainfall, river networks, and local climates. Swamps disappeared in some regions, while new wetland areas emerged elsewhere. For countless years, these changes dictated where plants and animals could thrive. The dense forests of the time absorbed vast quantities of carbon dioxide from the air. When plant material died and was quickly buried before fully decomposing, a large portion of that carbon remained trapped underground. Over long spans, this process helped shape the planet's climate. The buried organic matter eventually transformed into extensive coal seams, which stayed hidden for millions of years before humans later began to exploit them. Different plant groups dominated different habitats. Club mosses favored damp lowlands, ferns spread across slightly elevated dry ground, and towering horsetails grew alongside streams and ponds. Their robust roots stabilized the soil, while thick canopies created cool, shaded, and moist microenvironments. Such conditions were ideal for insects that preferred humidity. Many insects depended directly on plants for food. Some gnawed leaves and stems or consumed spores, while others fed on decaying plant debris that accumulated on the forest floor. Predatory insects, in turn, relied on these herbivores, giving rise to a complex food web that allowed numerous species to coexist within the same forest. Even after the rocks of the Carboniferous have been weathered for millions of years, they continue to provide valuable insights into ancient life. Every fossil adds a new chapter to Earth's distant past, revealing a remarkable world where giant insects thrived. The composition of Earth's atmosphere has not always been as it is today. Throughout the planet's long history, the mixture of gases surrounding it has fluctuated many times, with some periods featuring markedly lower oxygen levels than today, and others exhibiting considerably higher concentrations. One of the most crucial episodes took place during the Carboniferous period, when oxygen reached one of the highest levels in Earth's history. Scientists estimate that oxygen made up about 35% of the atmosphere then, far more than today's roughly 21%. Such a concentration profoundly affected plants, animals, insects, forests, rivers, swamps, and countless natural processes that shaped life on land. The rise of oxygen began long before the Carboniferous. Over countless millions of years, the planet changed gradually. Volcanoes spewed gases into the sky, oceans formed, continents drifted, and the simplest life forms appeared. In the earliest air, there was virtually no breathable oxygen for animals. It was filled with gases rising from the planet's interior. Eventually, tiny organisms learned to use sunlight to make food, and in doing so, they released oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen did not linger in the atmosphere because it quickly reacted with iron and other substances in the oceans and on land. Massive amounts of oxygen were consumed in those chemical reactions, preventing it from building up in the air. As more and more of these tiny organisms produced oxygen, the substances that could bind it became saturated. After many millions of years, oxygen finally began to accumulate in the atmosphere. The buildup was not rapid. It proceeded extremely slowly over a vast span of Earth's history. Each new generation of microscopic life added a little more oxygen than the one before. Gradually, the air grew richer in oxygen, opening the door for more complex life to emerge. By the start of the Carboniferous, plants had already taken a substantial share of the landscape. Early forms were small and simple, but over time they grew larger and more intricate. Roots grew stronger, stems grew taller, and leaves became more efficient at capturing sunlight. Plants spread across a huge area that had previously been largely barren. Dense forests covered continents, especially in warm, humid regions with frequent rain and flowing rivers. For most of the Carboniferous, the climate favored the expansion of these forests. Many areas were warm, damp, and shallowly flooded. Vast swamps developed in these zones, and because water moved slowly, the swamps persisted for long periods. The soil was soft, and dead plants often fell into standing water before they could dry out in the open air. Trees grew close together, forming forests that stretched across immense distances. Ferns, giant club mosses, horsetails, seed ferns, and many other ancient plants filled the swamps with thick greenery and tall trunks. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, these plants produced food through photosynthesis. During this process, they took in carbon dioxide from the air and released oxygen. Each leaf contributed a small amount of oxygen to the atmosphere. One plant could not change the air's composition, but the massive forests that covered colossal areas released huge volumes of oxygen day after day. Year after year, these forests continued to grow, emitting ever more oxygen into the sky. The amount of oxygen in the air depended not only on how much was produced, but also on how much was consumed. Oxygen disappeared from the atmosphere through many natural processes, such as the decomposition of dead plants and animals. Dead organic matter breaks down into tiny organisms such as bacteria and fungi. During decomposition, oxygen is used. It is taken up by fire and also by chemical reactions involving rocks and minerals. The amount of oxygen left in the atmosphere depends on a balance between its production and its consumption. In the Carboniferous era, an unusual relationship between these processes existed. Because forests spread over huge areas, plants generated oxygen at a very fast rate. At the same time, large amounts of dead plant material did not have time to decompose fully. Rather than being completely broken down, a big part of the plant remains, together with bacteria and fungi, became buried under silt, sand, and water. While buried, the carbon locked in the plants could not return to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. This burial of plant matter was one of the main reasons for the continued rise of oxygen. By making food, plants remove carbon dioxide from the air and release oxygen. If they later rot completely, much of that oxygen is consumed again as the carbon returns to the air. But when dead plants are buried before they finish decomposing, the carbon stays locked underground. The oxygen that was released while the plants grew stays in the atmosphere instead of being reused. Every year, the coal forests produced enormous amounts of plant material. Leaves fell into swamps, branches broke, and after storms or floods, whole trees sometimes collapsed. On the wet ground, thick layers of dead plant matter accumulated. Below the surface of the swamps, there often was not enough oxygen, so bacteria could not quickly break down all of that material. Decomposition proceeded much more slowly than on dry ground. New layers of vegetation fell on top, pushing the older ones deeper and deeper. The weight of the new deposits gradually increased pressure. Layers of silt and sand repeatedly covered the material. Over long periods, the buried plant matter was transformed. Heat and pressure slowly turned it into massive coal seams. Many of today's coal deposits originated from those ancient coal forests. The formation of coal helped keep oxygen levels high. Each layer represented carbon that had been removed from the atmosphere for a long time. Because that carbon stayed underground and did not return to the air, oxygen continued to build up. Studies of ancient rocks show that the coal deposits of that time were among the largest in Earth's history. Another factor that contributed to the high oxygen content was the organisms that decomposed wood. Modern mushrooms break down wood efficiently and quickly return its substances to the natural cycle. However, as many scientists have long thought, during most of the coal-forming period, the organisms that could fully digest the durable component called lignin were not yet widely distributed or were much less effective than later. Lignin gives wood its strength and hardness. Because only a few organisms could destroy lignin, large volumes of wood remained preserved and decayed slowly. This slow decay allowed the forests to keep storing carbon underground. Dead trunks lay in the swamps for a long time, and many were buried before they could fully decompose, adding even more carbon to the underground store. During the Carboniferous era, the atmosphere was gradually stripped of carbon, while oxygen levels remained exceptionally high. The drift of the continents placed much of the land near the equator, exposing it to abundant sunlight and steady rainfall. Rivers coursed across broad plains, creating extensive wetlands where warm temperatures spurred rapid plant growth for long stretches of the year. These thriving forests could persist for ages, continuously generating oxygen without major interruptions. Sea levels rose and fell repeatedly throughout this time. Shallow seas periodically inundated coastal areas and then retreated, leaving behind newly formed swamps that quickly became colonized by plants. Each fresh swamp offered a perfect setting for massive stands of vegetation to flourish, die, and eventually become buried beneath sediment. As these plant layers accumulated, they altered the composition of the atmosphere, pulling vast amounts of carbon dioxide out of the air. The reduction of carbon dioxide helped to cool the climate, while ongoing photosynthesis kept transferring carbon into plant tissue and releasing oxygen. Because direct measurements of an atmosphere that existed hundreds of millions of years ago are impossible, scientists infer ancient oxygen concentrations from indirect clues preserved in rocks, fossils, and chemical signatures. Ancient soils contain minerals that form under specific oxygen conditions, and the chemistry of certain rocks records shifts in atmospheric composition over time. Coal seams reveal how much plant material was buried, while fossil charcoal indicates that fires could ignite easily in an oxygen-rich environment. Tiny bubbles trapped in ancient materials, as well as the isotopic makeup of sulfur and carbon, are examined alongside computer simulations that integrate geological, chemical, biological, and climatic data. Together, these methods consistently point to oxygen levels that were markedly higher than today's. Elevated oxygen had profound effects on living organisms. Animals that breathed air received more oxygen with each breath, making cellular processes more efficient and influencing growth, activity, and survival chances. Insects, whose respiratory systems rely on spiracles, small openings on the body's side, were especially affected. Air enters through these openings and travels through a network of tubes that deliver oxygen directly to tissues. While this system works well for small insects, larger bodies pose a diffusion challenge because oxygen must travel longer distances. In an atmosphere rich in oxygen, diffusion became easier, allowing insects to attain far greater sizes than those possible under modern oxygen levels. This environment gave rise to some of the largest arthropods ever recorded, including giant relatives of modern dragonflies, massive centipedes, oversized cockroach ancestors, and other sizable invertebrates. Although high oxygen was not the sole factor behind their enormous stature, it provided a crucial condition that enabled such extraordinary growth. The surrounding conditions were perfect for plant life. Plenty of sunlight, abundant water, and comfortable temperatures let the forests keep spreading. Every growing season produced fresh leaves, stems, roots, and trunks, and the new growth simply took the place of the plants that had died. This endless cycle kept the rate of photosynthesis high across vast stretches of land. In the swamps, organic material built up year after year. Because water slowed the movement of oxygen into the soil, it was hard for decomposing organisms to reach the deeper layers. As a result, dead plants lasted much longer than they would in dry forests. The carbon trapped inside them continued to help raise the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. Large rivers that crossed these wetlands regularly carried sediment into the swamps, burying fallen plants beneath fresh layers of silt. Each burial saved more plant matter from full decay. Over extremely long periods, repeated burials formed thick beds of coal-bearing rock that can still be seen in many parts of the world today. Oxygen levels did not jump up all at once. They rose gradually over millions of years. Every new generation of forest added more oxygen than it used because enormous quantities of carbon stayed locked underground. This slow but steady process eventually produced one of the highest oxygen concentrations in Earth's history. As oxygen grew, some regions experienced more natural fires, since the vegetation became easier to ignite. Charcoal preserved in ancient rocks confirms that these coal-forming forests did indeed burn. After a fire, plant life usually returned, and the cycle began again. Young forests took in carbon dioxide, released oxygen, and laid down fresh layers of plant material that would later be buried. Various groups of plants each played their part. Giant club mosses created dense stands in many swamps, while horsetails, when conditions allowed, reached impressive heights. Ferns carpeted the damp soil, and seed ferns added further variety to the vegetation. All of these groups performed photosynthesis, replenishing atmospheric oxygen and storing carbon in their roots, stems, and leaves. For millions of years, their combined growth built a grand biological system that constantly reshaped the composition of the air. The oceans contributed as well. Marine plants and microscopic organisms continuously released oxygen as they photosynthesized. Although the Carboniferous land forests were especially effective at locking away carbon, oceanic life remained a steady additional source of oxygen. Together, terrestrial and marine plants drove a gradual increase in atmospheric oxygen that defined this remarkable era. About 320 million years ago, the Earth bore little resemblance to the modern world. It was draped in endless forests of giant club mosses, towering horsetails, seed ferns, and many other ancient plants that no longer dominate the planet. Warm temperatures and high humidity allowed these forests to spread across huge territories. Slow-moving rivers cut across the dry land, wide swamps filled the low-lying areas, and thick layers of fallen trees, leaves, and dead plants accumulated on the ground. Over time, these ancient forests transformed into the coal deposits that people mine today. Within the vegetation lived a multitude of early animals, especially amphibians that lingered near the water's edge. Reptiles had only just begun to settle when spiders were hunting among the leaves. Centipedes were crawling over the forest litter, and insects filled the air and the vegetation. At that time, some insects grew to sizes that would seem incredible to us today. Their great size was the result of an extremely long evolution that started hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the first reptiles appeared. Scientists place insects inside the larger group called arthropods. Arthropods have a hard outer shell, bodies divided into segments, and jointed limbs. Long before insects existed, The oceans were already full of many arthropods. Some were so tiny that they could be seen only with careful study, while others were much larger. Over millions of years, different groups developed new body shapes and new ways of living. Some stayed in the water, and others gradually made the move onto land. The transition from water to land was not easy. Creatures needed protection from drying out, stronger legs to support their bodies out of the water, and a way to breathe air instead of extracting oxygen from water. After countless generations, early terrestrial arthropods began to show these traits. A hard outer covering helped keep moisture inside, and their jointed legs became sturdier, allowing them to move on stones, silt, fallen leaves, and soil. Their respiratory system also changed. Air entered tiny openings and traveled through tubes that reached directly to the tissues. Among those early land-dwelling arthropods were the ancestors from which insects later evolved. These first forms were very different from the insects we know today. They had simple bodies and lacked many of the features of later species. They stayed close to the ground, hiding under dead plants, in cracks, and in damp soil. Small plant material, particles, fungi, other organic matter, and sometimes tiny living creatures served as food. Their tiny size helped them survive because they needed fewer resources and could hide more easily from predators. As plants spread across the land, insects found ever more space to live. Every new type of vegetation opened additional possibilities. Leaves offered food, stems and dead wood gave shelter, and the soil beneath the dense greenery stayed cool and moist. Those conditions allowed insect populations to grow. Over time, different groups developed special adaptations that helped them survive in various environments. Some became better at burrowing into the ground, others grew more confident climbers, and some improved their mouth parts to exploit new foods. These changes, occurring over long epochs, gave rise to countless new insect species. One of the most important milestones in insect history was the appearance of wings. Scientists are still working out exactly how the first wings formed, because the earliest stages are poorly preserved in the fossil record. Several ideas exist. Some researchers think wings began as flat outgrowths that helped insects control their movement during jumps or falls. Others suggest that wings evolved from structures linked to breathing, or from body parts that originally served a different purpose and only later adapted to flight. Regardless of how the process unfolded, the appearance of wings was one of the biggest changes in insect evolution. The earliest wings probably did not allow full flight. They might have helped insects glide short distances or control their landing after falling from a plant. Even this limited capability gave a huge advantage. Insects could move more safely between branches, avoid danger, and fall straight to the ground less often where predators waited. Natural selection favored those whose wings worked a little better. Over countless generations, the wings grew larger, stronger, and more efficient. As flight became refined, insects entered parts of the environment that had previously been hard to reach. They crossed streams, traveled between distant plants, and searched for mates over larger areas. Flight let them locate new food sources faster and escape from enemies. Groups that mastered flying spread out in many directions, creating a great diversity of winged insects. The atmosphere of the late Paleozoic era played an important role in this story. During the Carboniferous period, the amount of oxygen in the air was much higher than it is today. Scientists list this to the vast forests that covered endless stretches of land. While carrying out photosynthesis, plants took in huge quantities of carbon dioxide and released oxygen. When plants died, their remains often accumulated in damp swamps, where they decomposed only partially. Large stores of carbon stayed buried, so the oxygen level remained unusually high for a long time. This affected many living organisms. Insects breathe through tiny openings called spiracles that connect to a network of tubes known as tracheae. These tubes deliver oxygen directly to the body's tissues. This system works very well for small animals, but as size increases, its efficiency declines. With a high proportion of oxygen, the gas can penetrate deeper into a larger body, allowing some insects to grow much bigger than modern ones. Yet oxygen alone was not enough. Gigantism arose from a combination of factors. The extensive forests provided plenty of food and shelter. The humid climate reduced the risk of drying out. In many places, dense vegetation persisted year-round. Predators capable of catching large insects were few. Birds had not yet appeared, and flying reptiles arrived much later. Such conditions allowed large, winged insects to thrive and multiply for many generations. Their ancestors gradually grew under the pressure of natural selection. In each generation, individuals varied slightly in size, wing strength, shape, and other traits. Some of these variations increased the chances of survival. Bigger wings let them travel farther. Stronger flight muscles supported heavier bodies. Sharp eyesight improved hunting success. Those with advantageous traits were more likely to leave offspring, passing the traits to the next generation. After countless generations of small changes, individual species reached astonishing sizes. The most famous giant flyers were the Meganeurids, which are often mistaken for modern dragonflies because they look similar externally. However, Meganeurids belonged to a different, now completely extinct group. The wingspan of some of these creatures stretched beyond 60 centimeters. Their long bodies, broad wings, and huge eyes turned them into adept hunters of the ancient skies. Meganeurids possessed 2 pairs of sturdy wings attached to the middle of their bodies. A lattice of veins reinforced the wings while keeping them light enough for flight. Each pair moved with great precision, giving the insects fine control over their movements. They could change direction quickly, rise, drop, and for a brief moment hover almost in place while scanning for prey. Most of the head was taken up by massive compound eyes, composed of thousands of tiny lenses. Every lens captured a different slice of the surrounding space, and together they provided a wide field of view that made it easy to detect motion. Sharp vision was essential because Meganeurids chased other insects while both were airborne. They needed to judge speed, distance, and direction with accuracy. Their mouthparts were built for seizing and eating animal prey. Strong jaws could crush the bodies of small insects, while the legs, equipped with sharp spikes, helped them grasp victims in the air or on branches and stems. After catching a prey item, Meganeurids would quickly tear it apart with their powerful mouthparts, turning it into manageable pieces. Large muscle groups that powered the wings occupied a considerable part of the middle section of the body. Working together with the wings, these muscles enabled rapid aerial movement. Flight demanded huge energy expenditures, but the plentiful insects of the coal forest environment supplied enough food for these predators. The forests themselves formed a complex habitat with endless opportunities for flying insects. Tall vegetation created multiple tiers, letting sunlight reach the upper canopy, while darkness and dampness lingered below. Streams, ponds, and swamps added further niches. Through these varied spaces, winged insects roamed in search of food, mates, and suitable spots to lay eggs.
The life cycle of many ancient flyers likely shared key traits with modern dragonflies and related groups. Because complete fossils of every developmental stage are scarce, some details remain uncertain. However, eggs were probably deposited near water or in humid areas. Young insects developed under favorable conditions before transforming into winged adults. As they matured, their muscles and eyes grew larger, and their wings fully formed, allowing sustained flight. Most of what we know about these ancient insects comes from fossils. Typically, a dead insect sank into shallow silt or sediment, where its body eventually decomposed and minerals replaced or preserved its delicate structures. In some specimens, the wings are preserved with astonishing detail, and the vein patterns let scientists differentiate species. Other finds retain the shape of the body, mouthparts, legs, and even traces of muscles. Fossilized insects have been uncovered in many regions worldwide. Each new discovery broadens our understanding of the diversity of early flying forms. Some fossils belong to tiny species, while others represent gigantic ones, illustrating the wide range of body sizes and lifestyles that insects displayed during the Carboniferous and early Permian periods. Studying these findings demands meticulous precision. Scientists often study specimens under powerful microscopes, photographing the tiniest details and comparing wing patterns with those of already known species. Modern imaging techniques let us glimpse hidden structures inside rock without harming precious fossils, and they help us understand the life and evolution of ancient insects much better. During the Carboniferous period, many insect groups developed a wide range of body shapes. Some species specialized in feeding on plants, while others hunted small animals. A few stayed near water, and some spent most of their time high in forest canopies. Flight let them colonize vast distances and occupy niches that were difficult for ground-dwelling animals to reach. Natural selection continued to refine every part of their bodies. Veins were arranged to strengthen the wings without adding undue weight. Legs adapted to the mode of feeding and locomotion, and sensory organs improved the ability to locate food, detect danger, and recognize potential mates. Body coloration could have provided protection or served as a means of communication, although original colors are rarely preserved in the fossil record. As they spread through ancient forests, giant flying insects became important predators in their ecosystems, keeping populations of small insects and other tiny creatures in check. At the same time, they themselves fell prey to large amphibians and early reptiles. Their presence formed part of a complex web of life that covered the swampy forests of the late Paleozoic. The further evolution of these insects depended on the persistence of favorable conditions. High oxygen levels, extensive forests, warm climates, and abundant swamps supported their success for millions of years. Their bodies mirrored the characteristics of the world they inhabited, and each generation passed on slight hereditary changes, gradually producing the astonishing giant flyers we recognize from fossils. Long before humans walked the Earth, the planet was home to many forms of life, unlike any modern animals. Among the most remarkable ancient creatures was Meganeura, a giant flying insect that lived in the coal-forming forests of the Carboniferous, when the land was covered by towering plants, massive ferns, giant club mosses, horsetails, and a variety of other vegetation. The atmosphere, climate, and overall environment differed markedly from today, allowing insects to attain sizes that seem incredible by modern standards. Meganeura became one of the largest flying insects in history,
and its remains continue to aid scientists in probing the distant past. Meganeura lived roughly 300 million years ago at the close of the Carboniferous period. Important information about this creature comes from fossils discovered in Europe, most notably in what is now France and England. The finds include fragments of wings, body sections, and other parts, which enable researchers to reconstruct the appearance and lifestyle of Meganeura. Complete fossils are rare, yet the preserved pieces are sufficient to form a clear picture of this giant. The name Meganeura means large veins, referring to the dense network of veins that branched across its wings. Like modern dragonflies, numerous strong veins supported the thin wing membrane, providing the rigidity needed for flight. This distinctive venation pattern allowed scientists to recognize Meganeura as a separate species of ancient insects. Scientists also evaluate the arrangement of the wing veins, how the insect flew, and how its body was built from other ancient forms. The wingspan of Meganeura reached about 70 centimeters, and some fossil specimens suggest that certain individuals could have been even larger. Because of this size, Meganeura ranks among the biggest known flying insects. Each wing was long, broad, and well suited for movement through the air. Like many modern insects, the wings were transparent, and a sturdy network of veins protected them from damage while in flight. The body was elongated and slender. On a large head sat a pair of huge, compound eyes, each composed of thousands of tiny lenses, giving the insect a wide field of view. Sharp vision was essential for locating prey while airborne. The large eyes allowed Meganeura to detect movement from many directions, helping it find food and avoid danger. Its antennae were short. Unlike many insects that rely mainly on long antennae, this giant depended primarily on sight. The mouth contained strong jaws adapted for catching and consuming other animals. Meganeura held struggling prey tightly, then bit off and swallowed pieces. This oral apparatus fit the role of an active predator perfectly. The legs were covered with small thorns that helped grasp prey during flight. When encountering another insect, Meganeura seized the victim with its feet and brought it to its mouth. The legs also allowed the insect to cling to branches and other resting spots, but they were not built for prolonged walking on the ground. Most of Meganeura's active life was spent in the air, with occasional rests on plants. Powerful internal muscles drove the wing movements. Flying required a huge amount of energy, especially for such a large insect. Strong muscles attached to the inner walls of the body gave precise control over wing flapping. Thanks to this musculature, Meganeura could move through forested areas in search of prey. The exact speed of its flight remains unknown, because no living representatives have survived, but researchers consider Meganeura to have been an active flyer for whom airborne movement was the main condition for survival. Coal forest wetlands provided an ideal home. Vast swamps and marshes covered a large part of the landscape, keeping the soil damp and surrounding many rivers, ponds, and marshes. Dense vegetation offered countless places for shelter, food, and reproduction. Fallen trees, rotting plants, and standing water supported a rich diversity of life. Among leaves, stems, and water bodies lived innumerable insects, giving predators such as Meganeura plenty of prey. The climate of that era was generally warm and humid, and frequent rains promoted the growth of huge forests that stretched over great distances. The plant world was rich and varied. Giant club mosses reached impressive heights. Tree ferns spread across the forest floor. Broadleaf ferns grew in the understory. Dense thickets of horsetails filled the swamps, and seed ferns added further variety.
These forests produced enormous amounts of plant material, which, after burial and long-term transformation, turned into coal. During the coal period, the atmosphere contained more oxygen than today. Scientists estimate that oxygen made up roughly 35% of the air, whereas now it is about 21%. This high oxygen level played an important role in the lives of insects. Insects draw air in through tiny openings on the sides of their bodies called spiracles. The incoming air moves into a network of tubes that carry oxygen straight to their tissues. Because insects lack lungs, this system works best when the surrounding air is rich in oxygen. A high oxygen atmosphere allowed large insects to get enough oxygen for their whole bodies. Dense, protected forests offered a safe haven from many threats. In such thick vegetation, Meganeura could rest and hide between its hunting flights. Tall plants created sheltered spots that shielded it from strong winds. Ponds and other water sources attracted countless small insects, giving Meganeura plenty of chances to feed during daylight. It was a predator that captured other insects living in the forests and swamps. During the Carboniferous period, many ancient insects thrived. Some were relatives of modern cockroaches, early grasshopper-like forms, and numerous other winged types. These smaller flyers made up an important part of Meganeura's diet. While searching for food, it likely patrolled ponds, streams, swamps, and open forest clearings. Its large compound eyes constantly scanned for movement. When it spotted potential prey, Meganeura would quickly change direction and swoop toward the target. Its spiked front legs stretched out to intercept the insect before it could escape. The victim was then held firmly while powerful jaws tore it into small pieces. Scientists think Meganeura mainly hunted in daylight, when its huge eyes gave it the greatest advantage. Sharp vision helped it judge distance, direction, and speed while flying, reducing the chance of missing prey or crashing into obstacles. Although Meganeura was a formidable aerial predator, many other animals lived alongside it. Early amphibians inhabited the swamps and riverbanks, while some reptiles had already begun to explore various habitats. The forests were home to large spiders, giant millipedes, and other arthropods, each occupying its own niche in the Carboniferous ecosystem. The life cycle of Meganeura probably resembled that of modern dragonflies, since the two groups are closely related. Researchers believe females laid their eggs in fresh water or near its edge. After the eggs hatched, the young insects, nymphs, lived underwater and looked very different from the adults. They had no developed wings and hunted small creatures beneath the surface. These aquatic nymphs were also predators, feeding on tiny aquatic animals, insect larvae, and other minute prey. As a nymph grew, it shed its outer skin many times. Each molt allowed the body to expand. This process continued until the nymph reached full maturity. When the time came for the nymph to become an adult, it left the water by climbing onto a plant stem, a stone, or another solid surface. The outer shell cracked open and the adult insect slowly emerged. The soft wings unfolded as body fluids entered them. After the wings hardened and the body strengthened, the adult Meganeura took its first flight over the forests surrounding the swamps. Most of its adult life was probably spent hunting, avoiding danger, seeking mates, and eventually producing the next generation. Males may have defended small, prey-rich territories, while females searched for suitable freshwater sites to lay their eggs safely. Scientists piece together the story of these ancient giants by looking at today's dragonflies and the fossil record of long-gone insects, carefully reconstructing how Meganeura lived in its world. The life cycle of the giant insects unfolded much like that of many modern species. Although they thrived hundreds of millions of years ago,
Their development followed a set sequence from birth to adulthood. Researchers have uncovered details of this process by examining fossilized remains and tracing the long history of their evolution. Every new fossil adds another clue about how these remarkable creatures grew, found mates, and produced offspring in an era when the planet was nothing like it is today. The biggest insects roamed during the Carboniferous period, which began roughly 359 million years ago and ended about 299 million years ago. Throughout this extensive span, vast forested lands covered much of the Earth. The atmosphere contained far more oxygen than it does now, a factor that allowed insects to reach sizes never seen in the modern world. Within dense forests, swamps, rivers, and other humid habitats, giant relatives such as the massive stricos, gigantic centipedes, large cockroach-like insects, and countless other arthropods made their homes. Each giant insect's life started with an egg. The female carefully selected a site that offered the best chance of survival, and the exact spot varied with species. Some laid their eggs on plant material, others buried them in soft soil or wet, sludge-laden detritus. The relatives of the stricos most likely deposited theirs near water because the early stages depended on an aquatic environment. A tough outer shell protected the egg, limiting moisture loss and shielding the developing organism from harsh conditions. Inside the egg, a tiny body gradually took shape. Cells divided and specialized, forming legs, eyes, mouthparts, and internal organs step by step until the young insect was ready to emerge. The length of this maturation period depended on many factors. Warm weather usually sped development, while adequate humidity was crucial because many eggs required sufficient moisture. Excessive dryness or cold temperatures slowed the process, and some eggs could pause their growth until conditions improved. When the suitable habitat and food source appeared, the young insect hatched and moved on to the next stage of life. The appearance of the hatchling varied by species. Some resembled miniature, wingless versions of the adult, while others looked quite different from the form they would eventually become. Scientists think many of the giant stricos underwent incomplete metamorphosis. Their nymphs retained the general body plan of the adult, lived in water, and lacked fully developed wings. Nymphs spent much of their time searching for food, needing frequent meals to meet the massive energy demands of growth. As the insect grew, it could not expand its body the way mammals or birds do because it was encased in a hard exoskeleton. This protective shell does not stretch, so the animal must periodically shed it, a process called molting. Molting occurred many times over the insect's lifetime, each shedding allowing the creature to increase in size and continue its development toward adulthood. Before each molt, a fresh, soft exoskeleton begins to develop beneath the old one. When the new layer is ready, the old shell cracks open and the insect slowly squeezes out of it. At first, the new covering is still soft and flexible, so the creature usually hides in a safe spot while its body expands and the shell takes on the proper shape. After a while, the exoskeleton hardens and strengthens, and the insect resumes its normal activities. Every molt marks another stage of growth. Shedding the old shell makes the insect larger, lengthens its legs, strengthens its body, and allows its internal organs to keep developing.
Young members of the stricos family also start to show the first hints of wings, and with each successive molt, those wing buds grow larger until the adult stage is reached. The first molt after shedding the old shell is one of the most dangerous moments in an insect's life. The new exoskeleton has not yet hardened, leaving the animal vulnerable and less able to defend itself. The insect moves cautiously and often stays hidden until the shell fully hardens. If a predator discovers it at this point, it can easily take advantage of the weakness. Young giant relatives of the strikos spend a large part of their lives in water. Streams, ponds, swamps, and slow-moving rivers provide space for growth and hunting. Even before they mature, these aquatic nymphs are active predators. They feed on small water dwellers, insect larvae, tiny crustaceans, worms, tadpoles, and any other prey they can catch. Their mouthparts are perfectly suited for seizing victims. Modern strikos nymphs have a specialized lower mouthpiece that can thrust forward and grab prey with lightning speed. Scientists think ancient relatives possessed a similar structure, allowing them to snatch food before it could escape. As the nymphs grow, the size of suitable prey also increases. Their strong jaws can crush or cut food into pieces that are easy to swallow. Inside the body, the food is digested, and the nutrients are used to build muscles, nerves, wing buds, and other tissues needed for further growth. Breathing is also crucial. Aquatic nymphs obtain oxygen from the water, and different insect groups have evolved various ways to do this. Some have internal structures that absorb dissolved oxygen directly from their surroundings. As long as the water stays rich in oxygen, young insects can remain active beneath the surface. The underwater world offers many opportunities, but it also hides many dangers. Large fish, amphibians, and other aquatic predators hunt in the same pools. Young giant insects must find food while avoiding becoming prey themselves. Staying still among submerged plants, taking shelter under fallen leaves, or resting on the bottom helps them remain unnoticed. With each molt, the body becomes larger, bringing the insect closer to its final adult form. The wing rudiments expand, muscles strengthen, and reproductive organs develop. These internal changes are regulated by hormones that serve as natural chemical signals, determining when the next molt will occur and which developmental stage follows. The last molt is especially significant. The insect sheds its final immature exoskeleton and emerges as a fully developed adult. When the young nymph of a giant strikos-type insect finally emerged from the water, it clambered onto a fallen stem, a branch, or a stone near the shore. Its old shell split open, and the adult insect slowly freed itself. As soon as it slipped out, its wings were still soft and folded. The insect's blood-like fluid rushed into the wing veins, inflating them to their full size. The creature waited for the wings to harden, because taking off too early would tear the delicate membranes, which could not yet support the body's weight. Once the wings had solidified, a new phase of life began. The insect could now soar over forests, swamps, and open clearings in search of food and mates. Flight greatly expanded the area it could explore. Instead of being limited to a single pond or stream, an adult could visit many different sites during its lifetime. Adult giants of the strikos lineage proved to be adept hunters. Their large eyes, composed of thousands of tiny facets, offered a broad view that captured even the slightest movement. A quick reaction allowed them to chase down other insects in mid-air. Their strong legs folded into a sort of basket, scooping prey before it reached the powerful jaws awaiting below. Even after reaching full size, the insects still needed food. Energy was essential for sustained flight, hunting, escaping predators, and, most importantly, for reproduction. A rich diet improved the chances of successful mating and of producing robust eggs, especially for females that required ample nutrients to form healthy offspring with stored resources for early development. Reproduction started once both males and females attained sexual maturity. They sought partners of their own species by recognizing visual cues, movements, and, at times, chemical signals. Size, wing motion, color patterns, and behavior all helped individuals identify one another. Courtship rituals differed among groups. Some males guarded territories where females were likely to appear. Others roamed larger areas, hoping to encounter a potential mate. Because many meetings occurred in the air, the ability to fly was crucial. Competition among males was common. Whichever male reached a female first usually earned the chance to pass on his genes. Large size, strength, agile flight, and good health all increased the odds of successful reproduction. During mating, the male transferred sperm to the female, who stored it until her eggs were ready for fertilization, typically within her body before she laid them. This storage protected the embryos during the earliest stages of development. After mating, the female carefully selected a suitable site for laying her eggs. Choosing the right place was one of the most critical steps, as the survival of the hatchlings depended entirely on the conditions of their birth environment. Factors such as water quality, food availability, protection from predators, and appropriate temperature all influenced the next generation's chances of thriving. Because only a fraction of the young survived to adulthood due to disease, predators, weather extremes, floods, droughts, and food shortages, many females laid large clutches of eggs. By producing many offspring, the likelihood increased that enough would endure to continue the species. While the adult insects kept living, the eggs developed unnoticed inside. In each tiny embryo, legs, eyes, muscles, nerves, digestive organs, and other body parts gradually formed. When the appropriate stage was reached, the newborn broke through the shell and the cycle began anew. As it grew, its body adapted better to the surrounding conditions. Each molt brought small but significant changes that improved its chances of survival. After every shedding of the cuticle, the muscles grew stronger, giving the insect finer control over its movements. The legs became more robust, allowing it to climb, crawl, swim, and cling to plants with increasing confidence. The mouth parts enlarged and hardened, expanding the range of foods the insect could process because a larger body required more nourishment. As development continued, the digestive system became more efficient. Food entered the mouth, was ground up, and then moved along the gut. Enzymes broke down the material, extracting useful nutrients, proteins, fats, and other compounds needed to build new tissue. Unused waste was expelled from the body through the digestive tract. This continual loop of eating, digestion, assimilation, and waste removal persisted throughout the insect's life. The circulatory system supported growth by distributing nutrients and oxygen. Insects possess an open circulatory system rather than a closed network of vessels like mammals. A dorsal tube functions as the heart, slowly pumping fluid through internal cavities, delivering nutrients to growing tissues and helping to carry away metabolic byproducts. Together with the breathing apparatus, this system sustained the body during periods of rapid growth. As the insect aged, its nervous system also matured. The brain and main nerve cords governed movement, nutrition, balance, and reactions to threats. Young insects gained experience through repeated encounters. They did not learn in the same way people do, but constant interaction with their environment shaped their behavior. An insect that successfully escaped a predator or found food in a particular spot was likely to repeat similar actions when faced with the same conditions. As adulthood approached, vision grew increasingly important. Compound eyes kept developing, adding new facets and sharpening the ability to detect motion. Keen eyesight let large flying insects spot prey from a distance and react swiftly. Even the slightest movement could signal the presence of food or danger.
Simple eyes helped gauge light levels and distinguish day from night. Other senses also played a crucial role. Fine hairs on various parts of the body sensed air or water movement, warning the insect of an approaching predator before direct contact. Sensory structures on the antennae detected chemical cues in the environment, aiding in locating food, choosing suitable habitats, and later recognizing mates during the breeding season. As the insects grew older, they began to occupy different parts of their surroundings. The youngest individuals typically stayed in sheltered spots with abundant food and fewer predators, while the larger, stronger insects ventured into more open areas where food was plentiful. The gradual shift in the habitat eased competition between insects of different ages living together. Seasons played a big part in this change. In warm periods, the higher temperatures sped up the insects' bodily processes, so they grew faster. Food was also more abundant then, allowing them to eat regularly. When the weather turned cold, growth slowed down. Many insects entered a resting state, reducing their activity until conditions improved again, which helped them conserve energy. For insects that lived close to water, the amount of rain had a strong impact.
Healthy ponds, swamps, and streams hosted rich communities of tiny animals and provided food for growing nymphs. Heavy rains created new pools and expanded swamps, giving young insects extra space to develop. In contrast, long droughts shrank the available environment, forcing many individuals into cramped areas where food was scarce. Plants helped maintain the ecosystem even when insects weren't directly feeding on them. Thick vegetation shielded insects from predators and harsh weather, while leaves and stems offered safe spots for molting. Dead material that fell into the water turned into a refuge for young aquatic creatures. The roots of plants reinforced the banks of streams and ponds, creating suitable places for eggs and developing nymphs. The quality of the surroundings strongly affected survival chances. Clean, oxygen-rich water supported healthy growth of aquatic plants, which in turn benefited the insects that relied on them. Water loaded with decaying organic matter became low in oxygen, making life much harder for the inhabitants. Insects that lived in clearer waters usually reached adulthood in the best condition. Development rates varied not only between species, but also among individuals of the same species. The timing of maturation depended on food availability, temperature, and the presence of threats. Some insects became adults early thanks to steady growth in favorable conditions, while others took longer because repeated challenges slowed their progress. Injuries were another common problem during the growing years. Legs or antennae could be damaged by predators or by navigating uneven terrain. Young insects sometimes regenerated lost parts during subsequent molts. An early lost leg might grow back smaller but still functional. After the final molt, this ability largely disappeared because molting ceased. Large insects also faced threats from diseases and parasites. Some were likely infected with fungi, bacteria, or microscopic parasites. Internal parasites entered the body through contaminated food or water, while external parasites attached to the outer surface. Well-nourished, healthy insects generally fought off infections better than weakened individuals under harsh conditions. Energy was carefully allocated throughout the life cycle. In the early stages, most of the energy went toward growth, building bigger muscles, stronger wings, and developing reproductive organs. Once adulthood was reached, a larger share of energy was redirected toward reproduction. Adult insects still needed to find food, but once they reached the mature stage, their primary task shifted to producing eggs or sperm. Fully functional reproductive organs only appeared after the final molt. Males then developed the structures needed to generate and transfer sperm,
while females gradually built ovaries that filled with mature eggs. Each egg stored nutrients that would sustain the embryo after hatching. Locating a suitable partner often required long journeys across rivers, ponds, and forest clearings where relatives gathered. Good weather boosted activity, whereas heavy rain, strong wind, or unexpected cold limited the chances for mating. Many insect species depended on a precise timing. Males and females had to become adults at roughly the same moment in order to meet. If one sex matured significantly earlier than the other, the number of possible pairings declined. Natural selection therefore favored a synchronized breeding season within each species. Reproductive success also hinged on the condition of the adults. Individuals that had enjoyed abundant food as larvae usually entered adulthood with stronger bodies and larger energy reserves. Well-fed females typically laid more healthy eggs, and males with robust flight muscles and overall good health were more likely to find mates and reproduce successfully. Forming an egg took considerable time. Each developing egg contained a suite of substances that, after fertilization, would nourish the growing embryo. After mating, females continued to feed in order to gather enough resources for the maturation of their clutch. As the eggs developed inside the body, they migrated toward the appropriate organs, where they were eventually deposited in suitable locations. The ancient world was a realm of constant motion. Every organism searched for food, fled danger, defended its shelter, and fought daily for survival. Across land, water, and air, animals depended on other living things for nourishment. Some hunted healthy prey, others scavenged weak, wounded, or dead organisms. Each day brought new threats, forcing all creatures to stay vigilant. There was never a long period of calm because the need to eat, grow, and reproduce drove the lives of all living things. Giant insects, early amphibians, ancient fish, and many other life forms shared the same world, each confronting its own challenges.
During the Carboniferous period, vast forests of towering club mosses, horsetails, seed ferns, and other plants blanketed the land. This dense vegetation created dark, damp refuges for insects and other small animals. Wet soils, sluggish streams, ponds, and extensive swamps supported countless species. The rich habitats offered abundant food, but also attracted predators. Wherever food appeared, hunters soon gathered, waiting for prey. Many insects fed on leaves, soft plant tissues, spores, seeds, decaying vegetation, and other organic material. They spent long periods searching through forest litter or climbing stems and branches to reach fresh foliage. While feeding, they were vulnerable. Predators often hid among the plants, ready to strike when an insect came close enough. Some hunters relied on speed, others on surprise, and a single careless move could send an insect straight into an ambush. Large flyers, such as Meganeura, ranked among the most famous aerial predators of this era. Broad wings let them zip through warm air above forests and marshes. Their enormous eyes caught movement from many directions at once. When a prey was spotted, the hunter would swivel sharply, closing the gap in an instant. By the time a tiny insect realized it was being chased, only a handful of fellow insects remained, and there was little time to find safety. Some tried to dive into thick foliage or slip through narrow leaf gaps, but those tactics did not always work. Flying insects have evolved a range of strategies to lower the odds of capture. Certain species hide during particular hours of the day, while others stay close to dense greenery, avoiding open spaces entirely. When danger loomed, many froze and waited silently for the threat to pass. The speed of their reaction often determined whether they escaped or became the predator's next meal. Hunting was not limited to the skies. Numerous ground predators prowled the forest floor, searching for prey among fallen leaves, broken branches, and damp earth. Large beetles scuttled through dark patches, hunting insects, juvenile amphibians, and other small creatures. Their many legs helped them navigate uneven terrain, and their powerful jaws could clamp down on a struggling victim, making escape extremely difficult. Early humans also relied on spiders in their quest for tiny animals. Some spiders sat patiently for unsuspecting prey, while others roamed the vegetation and soil in search of a meal. Success hinged on precise movements and lightning-quick strikes. Insects caught in these traps often became the next bite. Scorpions made their homes throughout ancient woodlands, hiding beneath fallen trunks, in cracks, and among thick layers of plant debris. As cooler weather or darkness fell, many emerged. Their strong claws seized prey firmly, and their sting halted any resistance. Insects that crossed their path seldom got away. Water presented its own set of dangers. Ancient fish hunted one another in rivers, lakes, swamps, and shallow coastal waters. Some relied on powerful jaws, others on sharp teeth. Small fish frequently formed schools, hoping that the random motion of the group would lower each individual's chance of being singled out. Yet predators regularly pierced these schools and snatched their targets. Along pond edges, large amphibians also hunted in the water. They often remained almost motionless until an unsuspecting animal drifted within reach, then surged forward with sudden speed, snapping up insects, fish, and smaller amphibians. Young animals had to be especially vigilant, for nearly every day they faced threats from larger inhabitants of the same habitat. The early stages of life were often far more perilous than adulthood. Eggs attracted many hungry creatures seeking an easy meal. Newly hatched insects and juvenile amphibians were small, fragile, and had little means of defense. Many never survived to adulthood because predators found them before they could grow and strengthen. Daily existence was further complicated by competition. Animals contended not only with predators, but also with members of their own and other species for food, space, shelter, and breeding sites. Areas rich in resources drew numerous hungry competitors, and even when abundance seemed plentiful, individuals had to stay alert as others would lay claim to the same supplies. Competition among herbivorous insects became especially fierce when fresh vegetation first appeared. The tender new leaves offered a rich source of nutrients essential for growth and development. On certain plants, large numbers of insects would quickly converge, putting heavy pressure on the limited food supply. When the local crowding became too intense, the insects moved to other parts of the forest in search of fresh foliage. Entering unfamiliar territory exposed them to new hazards and to a range of predators. Predatory insects, too, were engaged in competition. Productive hunting grounds attracted many hunters. If several dragonflies patrolled the same stretch of air, each captured less prey, and every missed catch meant wasted effort and energy without sufficient replenishment. Some individuals retreated to quieter spots, while others stayed and kept searching despite the lower success rate. For many creatures, securing a safe territory was paramount. Prime hunting zones, secure resting sites, and suitable breeding areas held great value. Inhabitants often chased away intruders, a behavior that reduced competition and boosted the chances of finding enough food. Protecting a territory also shielded the young during critical developmental stages. Weather added further daily challenges. Although much of the Carboniferous climate remained warm, conditions still varied. Heavy rains could flood the forest, raising water levels that submerged nests and forced animals to relocate. Strong winds hindered the precise flight control of insects.
During droughts, water levels in ponds and streams fell, concentrating animals in limited refuges and making them easier targets for predators. Seasonal shifts influenced plant growth, food availability, and reproductive cycles. At particular times, fresh greenery emerged, providing a bounty for herbivorous insects. As their numbers grew, both prey and predators increased. When food grew scarce, many animals were compelled to travel farther each day, lengthening their journeys and raising the risk of encountering dangerous predators. Diseases and injuries posed serious threats. Even a minor wound could compromise an insect's ability to move, hunt, or escape. A damaged wing prevented normal flight, while an injured leg slowed movement across the forest floor. Weakened individuals became easy prey because they could no longer react as swiftly as healthy ones. Molting was another perilous phase for insects. As they grew, they shed their old exoskeleton and formed a larger, soft, new shell that remained vulnerable until it hardened. Freshly molted insects were often captured without difficulty by predators. Finding shelter during this brief period markedly increased their chances of survival. Reproduction demanded time, energy, and careful site selection. Adult insects sought locations where, after hatching, the young would have immediate access to food.
Some laid eggs on plants that already provided nourishment, while others chose sites near water because the developing stages could thrive there. Selecting an unsuitable site sharply reduced the survival rate of the next generation. Male insects sometimes engaged in direct competition for mates. Strong flight, a robust body, and effective defense of a good territory improved the odds of success. Individuals that failed to find a partner did not pass on their traits to future generations. Over time, natural selection favored those animals whose structures and behaviors better ensured survival and reproduction under the conditions of that era. Keeping predator numbers stable also relied on successful breeding. Young hunters needed time to learn how to catch prey, and their first attempts often failed. As they gained experience, they improved at judging distance, speed, and movement. Adults usually hunted more successfully because they had refined these abilities over many months or years. The forest itself was always changing. Plants grew, died, and fell to the ground. Dead trees created gaps where sunlight could reach the understory. Fresh shoots attracted insects, and the insects in turn drew predators. Fallen trunks offered shelter to small animals, but they also became hunting grounds for larger predators that examined the rotting wood. Decaying vegetation hosted countless microscopic organisms that broke down dead leaves and wood. Small insects fed on this material and then became an important food source for larger hunters. Each layer of the forest supported its own forms of life, and all of them depended on one another's activities. A shift in one group affected many neighboring groups. Water quality also played a role in survival. Ponds with enough oxygen supported healthy fish and amphibian populations, while stagnant water created harsher conditions for some species. Floods carried plant debris, depositing both opportunities and hazards. Creatures that found themselves in unfamiliar surroundings had to adapt quickly. Young and old forests nurtured different communities. Dense vegetation sheltered many insects, while open spaces attracted aerial hunters. As animal needs changed, they moved from one habitat to another. A place that felt safe today could become dangerous tomorrow once it was discovered. Some animals were active during daylight, others during the night. This separation reduced direct encounters between certain predators and their prey, but it also introduced new threats. At any moment, someone was searching for food. Even animals that were resting had to stay alert because danger never fully disappeared. Large insects required a large amount of food to sustain their bodies.
Their flights consumed a great deal of energy. To hunt successfully, they needed strong muscles, healthy wings, and sharp vision. Several failed flights drained their energy reserves, and growing weakness further lowered hunting efficiency, creating a vicious cycle. Continuous access to food was essential to keep strength and daily activity. Competition arose among predators of different species. A dragonfly over a pond pursued the same flying insects that other aerial hunters also chased. Large amphibians sometimes captured prey near water that had escaped aerial pursuit. Spiders in nearby vegetation also relied on the insects that visited the area. Every successful hunt reduced the amount of food available for other predators. Consequently, in some regions, several hunters shared the same food resources. Giant dragonflies of the Coal and early Permian periods were among the most successful aerial predators of their era. They spent most of their lives searching for food, avoiding danger, finding mates, and producing the next generation. Every part of their bodies was built for these daily tasks. Large wings, powerful flight muscles, excellent eyesight, strong legs, and a sharp mouth enabled them to intercept prey skillfully. Every day, insects had to find food, because without a steady supply, they would run out of energy, grow weak, and struggle to cope with the shifting environment. The atmosphere of that age held more oxygen than today, which made it easier for insects to reach sizes far beyond those of their modern descendants. Giant dragonflies thrived under those conditions. Their bodies received ample oxygen, enabling vigorous flight. Massive wings swept them across forests, rivers, lakes, and marshes as they searched for meals. They did not pause for long in one spot. Instead, they kept moving through the air, constantly scanning for small creatures that might become their next bite. The eyes played a central role. Much like today's dragonflies, these ancient hunters likely possessed huge, faceted eyes that dominated much of the head. Each eye comprised thousands of tiny units, together forming a wide-angle view.
This arrangement let them detect movement from many directions without turning their heads. Even a tiny airborne insect would quickly appear in their sight. Sharp vision allowed them to judge distance, direction, and speed while in flight. Their brains processed this visual data at breakneck speed. Once prey was spotted, the predator altered its bite almost instantly. Such rapid response boosted the chances of catching the target before it could slip away. Because many insects could change direction abruptly, the dragonfly had to react just as fast during the chase. Flight itself was one of its greatest advantages. Long, robust wings were reinforced by a dense network of veins that kept the structures stiff and lowered the risk of damage during ordinary soaring. Repeated wing beats powered the muscles in the thorax, allowing the insect to stay aloft for extended periods without frequent landings. It could move forward, turn sharply, slow down, speed up, or hover when needed. Hovering let the dragonfly observe its surroundings without moving forward. At the moment a potential prey appeared nearby, it would dart toward it in an instant. Sometimes it pursued the victim for a few beats before the prey escaped. Other times, the attack began the instant the movement was noticed. The legs were built for seizing prey while airborne. The front pair stretched forward while the remaining legs folded into basket-like shapes. An insect caught in this grasp found it impossible to break free. The dragonfly clutched its catch tightly with its legs, continuing to fly or landing on a branch or plant. Its mouth parts served as another essential weapon, strong enough to slice through the hard exoskeleton of its target. After securing the prey, the dragonfly pierced it with its jaws, consuming the soft tissues inside. The nutrients gained fueled further flight, growth, repair of any damage, and reproduction. Each successful hunt replenished the energy spent searching for food.
The prey likely varied widely, but the dragonfly most often targeted small, flying insects because they were easier to capture. Early relatives of modern cockroaches and other winged insects populated the surrounding forests and marshes, frequently crossing open water or moving between trees. Giant dragonflies kept a close watch over those zones, where hunting opportunities were especially abundant. The prey often rested on leaves, trunks, or any other surface.
When the dragonfly sensed a shift, it launched itself from its perch and struck in an instant. At times, it chased insects already in flight, which demanded flawless control over speed and direction. To catch a moving target in the air, the hunter had to anticipate where the victim would be a moment later, not where it had just been. Because their eyesight worked best in bright conditions, these giant dragonflies likely hunted throughout the whole daylight period. Sunlight made it easier to spot movement and to judge distances. As evening fell, hunting grew harder, and rain, fog, or strong winds could further lower success by hampering flight and dimming visibility. Weather played a big role in their chances of survival. Warm temperatures kept their muscles operating efficiently, while cold slowed them down and made flying difficult. Heavy rain could tear their delicate wings or render flight unsafe, and wind forced them to spend extra energy to stay aloft. In such undergone weather, the dragonflies probably rested among plants or on tree trunks until the conditions improved. Forests offered plenty of comfortable spots to pause. Large trees, sturdy branches, thick foliage, and dense undergrowth let them settle safely between flights and hide from predators. Rest also gave their supporting muscles time to recover after lengthy periods in the air. Despite their strength, giant dragonflies were themselves prey for other creatures. Large amphibians living in swampy areas could snatch insects that flew close to the water's surface, and early reptiles of the time likely added insects to their diet as well. Big fish near the water's edge could grab a dragonfly that skimmed too low or lingered near a lake or riverbank. Thus, danger surrounded them at every turn. Their life began underwater as nymphs. Even at this early stage, they possessed powerful jaws and fed on small aquatic animals. They hid among submerged plants, fallen branches, stones, and silt, waiting patiently for unsuspecting prey. Small fish, tiny crustaceans, insect larvae, and other water-dwelling creatures made up their menu. This aquatic phase lasted far longer than the adult stage. While still a nymph, the dragonfly underwent several molts because its hard outer shell could not expand with its growing body. Each shedding left a soft, new cover that soon hardened again, allowing the insect to increase in size step by step. When hunting, the nymph relied on patience. Rather than swimming continuously, it often stayed motionless, letting the prey come close before striking with lightning speed. Its lower jaw snapped forward, seized the victim, and pulled it into the mouth before the prey could react. Yet the water world was full of threats. Large fish hunted the young dragonflies, and amphibians searched the same vegetation for food. Other sizable insect larvae competed for the same resources and sometimes attacked the smaller nymphs. To survive, they needed to remain unseen, grow steadily, and secure enough nourishment. As they grew, the nymphs neared the end of their underwater existence. Once fully developed, they used plants, rocks, or tree roots to climb out of the water. Their outer casing split open, and the adult dragonfly emerged slowly, ready to take to the air. The first wings were soft and folded, and the insect pumped its body fluid into them until the membranes were fully formed. After the wings hardened, a giant dragonfly finally lifted off for its inaugural flight over water, entering a world where every day depended on skill, speed, sharp vision, good hunting, and constant attention to every opportunity and threat around.
The ancient world was brimming with life, with creatures sharing forests, rivers, lakes, swamps, and open plains. Among them were giant insects, which became a vital part of the natural environment. They did not merely live alongside other animals and plants. Their daily actions shaped the surrounding ecosystems. Every movement, every meal, every egg laid, and each stage of their lives influenced other organisms in their own way. Giant dragonflies, massive centipedes, huge relatives of cockroaches, large scorpions, and many other arthropods interacted with their surroundings through feeding, reproducing, moving, and relating to plants. In the Carboniferous period, which began about 300 million years ago, warm weather persisted across many regions, and vast, swampy areas stretched far and wide. Dense forests of giant club mosses, horsetails, ferns, and seed ferns grew almost continuously, while the forest floor was carpeted with fallen leaves, dead stems, and broken branches. Slow-moving rivers and damp swamps lingered for long periods, providing food, shelter, and breeding sites for insects. Each year, the forests produced enormous amounts of plant material. Leaves fell, branches broke, old plants died, and new ones sprouted nearby.
These remnants became essential food for many insects. Giant insects roamed the forest floor in search of sustenance, helping decompose dead matter. By consuming decaying plants and other organic debris, they returned nutrients to the soil, which new plants then used to grow. Their movement disturbed the ground, mixing dead material with soil and creating small voids that let water seep in more easily, preserving humidity and eventually allowing roots to spread further. Among the most notable dead plant eaters were large centipedes, some of which far exceeded the length of their modern relatives. They slowly crossed the forest floor, feeding on soft, decaying vegetation and reducing the buildup of dead matter. After digestion, their waste, rich in nutrients, rejoined the soil, supporting fresh plant growth. Other insects fed on fresh leaves, stems, spores, seeds, and tender plant tissues. Some chewed holes in leaves, while others ate young shoots and tender growing parts. Their feeding habits influenced the growth and distribution of plants. Heavily damaged plants had to produce new leaves or stems. The constant interaction between insects and plants helped maintain the balance of life in prehistoric forests. Some insects specialized in a single plant species, while others ate whatever was available, spreading the feeding pressure across different types of vegetation. I made my way through the primeval forest, searching for food while watching the tiny insects that clung to bits of plant material. Even though flowering plants had not yet appeared, those early insects still managed to spread small fragments of vegetation across the landscape. Among the most successful aerial hunters of that age were the giant dragonflies. Their huge wings let them dart swiftly in pursuit of prey, and their enormous eyes provided a broad field of view, making it easier to spot movement below or ahead. They hunted small insects, flitting through the forest canopy, over rivers, and across swamps. Their sharp mouth parts allowed them to snatch and consume prey while in flight or perched on a branch. By feeding on other insects, giant dragonflies helped keep insect numbers in check. When certain species multiplied too rapidly, they could overwhelm vegetation or outcompete other creatures for food. Each day, predators captured many individuals, reducing their numbers and causing insect populations to fluctuate rather than staying at an extreme high for long. Young dragonflies spent most of their lives in water before emerging as winged adults. This aquatic stage lasted much longer than the brief adult phase and took place in ponds, lakes, slow-moving rivers, and swamps. In the water, they fed on worms, tiny fish, and other small aquatic organisms, linking the aquatic ecosystem with the surrounding forest. When they later left the water, The adult dragonflies hunted on land and in the air, completing a life cycle that moved energy from water to land. Aquatic insects were another crucial component of prehistoric nature. Their larvae thrived in streams and swamps, providing food for fish, amphibians, and larger aquatic predators. Many of these insects emerged from the water as adults, becoming fresh prey for aerial hunters like the giant dragonflies. This constant movement between water and land tied together different parts of the ecosystem. Numerous prehistoric amphibians relied heavily on insects for nourishment. Large amphibians near rivers and swamps often waited motionless for unsuspecting insects to approach, then snapped them up quickly. Smaller amphibians hunted among wet leaves and in shallow water. The abundance of insects determined how much food was available to these creatures, so healthy insect populations supported robust amphibian communities. Early birds and reptiles also fed on insects. Some hunted during daylight, while others became active after dark. Different insect species emerged at different times, allowing predators to find meals both day and night. Some insects hid among fallen leaves, climbed over logs, or pushed through dense vegetation where they often gathered in groups. The giant insects themselves served as food for larger animals. Their great size shielded them from many small predators, but not from larger hunters such as amphibians, reptiles, and other big predators that seized any opportunity to capture them. Their bodies provided valuable nourishment for these predators. When giant insects died naturally, their remains became a source of food for other organisms. Small insects, worms, fungi, and microorganisms broke down the carcasses, releasing nutrients into the soil and water. These nutrients then became available to plants and countless other creatures. Nothing went to waste for long, because many organisms depended on the matter left behind by the dead. Reproduction-linked insects played a crucial role in ancient ecosystems. Adult insects searched for suitable spots to lay their eggs, choosing places where, after hatching, the young would have enough food. Different species favored different settings. Some deposited their eggs in damp soil, others attached them to plants, and some left them near water. Aquatic insects often placed their eggs directly in ponds or slowly moving streams. The site chosen by the adults strongly influenced the chances of survival for the next generation. Once the eggs hatched, the juveniles immediately entered the food web. Many were eaten before they could grow up. Fish fed on aquatic larvae, while ground-dwelling predators hunted the terrestrial young. For most of that era, birds had not yet become a major ecological force, so hunting niches were filled by reptiles, amphibians, spiders, and larger insects. A huge number of offspring in each generation helped keep populations stable despite the losses. The hard outer coverings of these insects were shed as they grew. After each molt, the empty shells fell to the ground or sank into the water. Small organisms sometimes gnawed on pieces of these discarded shells. Over time, the material broke down and became part of the surrounding environment. Insects also sought shelter in fallen tree trunks, dense vegetation, peeling bark, damp soil, and piles of leaves, which protected them from predators and harsh weather. While moving through these habitats, they disturbed the substrate, leaving tiny tunnels and pathways. Other small animals sometimes used those tunnels as shelters or travel routes. Seasonal changes shaped insect activity. During wet periods, many insects moved more because food and water were abundant. During droughts, some reduced their activity or searched for spots that still retained moisture. Eggs, larvae, and adults responded differently to the shifting conditions. which altered the availability of food for predators throughout the year. The spread of giant insects across various habitats added to the diversity of ancient ecosystems. Some preferred dense, shady forests, others stayed near rivers or lakes. Some lived mainly on land, while others climbed plants or flew above the forest canopy. By occupying different environments, species used the available resources in distinct ways. When food, shelter, or breeding sites were scarce, competition arose. Individuals seeking the same resources often met, and the stronger or faster ones usually claimed the best feeding grounds. Some species avoided direct conflict by feeding at different times or selecting alternative food sources, which reduced clashes and allowed many species to coexist. Predatory insects typically targeted weak, wounded, or small prey because such targets were easier to catch. This removed unhealthy individuals from the population, allowing the stronger insects that escaped predation to reproduce and pass on their traits to their offspring. Over many generations, this process shaped the development of insect populations. Wings gave the giant insects the ability to move easily between habitats. For part of the day, a dragonfly could hunt above a swamp, then fly to the edge of the water where winged prey gathered. This mobility further enhanced their role in the ancient ecosystems. Movements of giant insects linked distant parts of the ancient landscape. Energy produced in one place could be carried to another, either on the back of a predator or after the predator's death. Tiny organisms, spores, fungal particles, and microscopic life accidentally clung to the legs or outer shell of an insect as it roamed through damp forest. When the insect moved on, those minute travelers were deposited on fresh soil or new plants, spreading them far and wide across the prehistoric world. Insects also played a role in water quality. Aquatic larvae fed on dead organic material and hunted small underwater creatures, reducing the buildup of matter in certain spots. Waste that fell into the water was broken down by microorganisms, and the continual circulation of nutrients supported a host of aquatic life forms. The presence of giant insects influenced where predators chose to hunt. Areas abundant in insects attracted amphibians, reptiles, spiders, and other hunters, which kept returning to spots where food was plentiful. Gatherings of predators, in turn, forced smaller animals to alter their routes to avoid becoming prey. Every stage of an insect's life became a food source. Larvae consumed eggs, tiny predators, fish larvae, amphibians, and other aquatic hunters. Adult insects served as prey for birds, terrestrial predators, climbers, and reptiles. After molting, empty shells provided a substrate for organisms that feed on organic material. In this way, each life stage contributed uniquely to the ecosystem. Large insects also shaped the behavior of smaller ones. When giant dragonflies hovered above, tiny flyers often changed direction abruptly or dove into dense vegetation. These repeated maneuvers determined where insects gathered at different times of day. Places with fewer predators sometimes drew more insects until hunting pressure rose again. The forest floor remained active day after day as animals continuously searched for food, mates, and shelter. Their movement stirred loose leaves and fragments of plant matter, and the minute creatures living beneath responded to the disturbance, gaining new food sources or access to fresh voids in the soil. Over long periods, such small, daily actions helped forge the historic forest ecosystems we know from the past. Rich vegetation supported countless insects, and those insects, in turn, influenced the movement of plant material throughout the environment. Dead plants became nourishment for herbivorous insects. Predators kept insect numbers in check,
and the remains of insects returned nutrients to the surrounding world. These interwoven processes unfolded daily in forests, swamps, rivers, and wetlands that were once home to giant insects. The era of these massive insects faded slowly, not because of a single catastrophic event, but due to a series of gradual changes that unfolded across the globe, altering the lives of the largest insects that once thrived in forests, swamps, and other natural habitats. In the early chapters of Earth's history, giant insects flourished under favorable conditions. Huge relatives of giant centipedes roamed the air and crossed the forest floor, while other large insects and their kin lived amid dense, warm, humid vegetation. Over many millions of years, the conditions that once allowed giant insects to exist gradually vanished. The shift in the environment presented these enormous arthropods with serious challenges. During the Carboniferous period, the atmosphere contained far more oxygen than it does today, and scientists think that this high oxygen level enabled insects to grow to sizes far beyond those of modern species. Insects breathe through tiny openings on the sides of their bodies called spiracles, which connect to a network of tubes that deliver oxygen directly to their tissues. This respiratory system works well for small animals, but its efficiency drops as body size increases. When the air was rich in oxygen, enough of the gas could reach every part of a giant insect's body, allowing some species to attain sizes that are impossible under present-day conditions. For a very long span of Earth's history, the oxygen concentration in the atmosphere slowly declined. The change was not abrupt. It unfolded over a lengthy period. As oxygen levels fell dramatically, insects found it increasingly difficult to supply their bodies through their spiracle system. Their large size became a disadvantage because oxygen could no longer reach their tissues as easily. Natural selection began to favor smaller individuals whose bodies used the reduced oxygen more efficiently. Over countless generations, the average size of many insect groups shrank. The forests of the early Carboniferous were also dramatically different. Vast, swampy woodlands dominated by giant club mosses, cowering horsetails, and early seed-bearing plants covered large portions of the planet. The ground stayed wet for extended periods, and thick layers of fallen vegetation accumulated on the forest floor. These habitats offered abundant food, shelter, breeding sites, and protection for the giant insects. Eventually, the climate changed. Some regions became drier, swamps receded, and the ancient swamp forests gradually disappeared. New types of plants spread across the landscape, replacing the old communities. For insects, this transformation had profound consequences. Species that relied on the now vanished plants for food or on the damp environments for laying eggs lost their essential resources. Those unable to adapt to the new conditions became increasingly rare. Changes in precipitation played a crucial role as well. In many areas, the previously stable, humid environments grew less reliable. Rivers altered their courses, lakes shrank or vanished, and the water sources that had once supported large insect populations dried up. Because many insects have life cycles tied to water, such shifts directly affected their survival. Eggs could desiccate before hatching, and larvae that lived in ponds or streams lost their habitats. Throughout many epochs, the planet's temperature also fluctuated, moving from warmer periods to cooler ones and back again. In some places that had once been warm year-round, new seasonal patterns emerged and seasonal differences intensified. A giant insect adapted to the former climate struggled to survive under the new conditions, while smaller species could more easily find shelter, cope with the changing weather, and complete their life cycles. Another key reason why giant insects began to disappear was the rise of new groups of animals.
In the early rapid growth era, there were fewer air-hunting creatures than there would be later. As animal diversity increased, many new predator species appeared. These predators moved onto land more and more successfully. They settled in a variety of habitats and hunted many kinds of prey, including insects. They ran quickly, scanned the vegetation, slipped through fallen trunks, and snatched insects while feeding or resting. At the same time, new types of reptiles spread into more and more terrestrial environments. Some hunted during the day, others at night. Because of this, giant insects had less time to move safely. Their large bodies were easy to see, and their motions attracted hungry predators. Smaller insects could hide among leaves, under bark, or in the soil. Later, pressure grew from the appearance of flying vertebrates. The first flying reptiles rose into the sky and began catching insects while they were airborne. They possessed sharp eyesight, swift movements, and became ever more skilled at flight. Large insects, which once dominated the air, now collided with hunters that could chase them over long distances. Escaping became harder as new predators could pursue them in open space. Eventually, the first birds emerged. Over many generations, they refined their flight and added insects to their diet. The birds searched for food in trees, bushes, open fields, and swamps. They quickly seized insects that were resting on leaves or flying over plants. Because giant insects were larger and more noticeable, they became easy targets compared with smaller ones. Competition among insects themselves grew stronger. New animal groups settled in different environments and developed new ways of feeding and reproducing. Some specialized on certain plants. Others became more effective predators. Some learned to survive in dry places, while others adapted to grassy plains, rivers, and lakes. The new insects competed for food, and natural selection favored those that reproduced quickly, escaped predators, and survived in a changing world. Small size often helped with these tasks. Small insects needed less food than giants, hid in narrow crevices where large species could not reach, grew faster, and produced many offspring in a short time. As the environment continued to change, these advantages became increasingly important. During these eras, plant life also kept evolving. In the end, flowering plants spread across a large part of the world, producing new flowers, fruits, and seeds. Many insects formed close relationships with flowering plants. Bees, day and night active butterflies, beetles, and numerous flies became vital pollinators. They usually stayed relatively small and could easily fly from one flower to another. Their success showed that under changing conditions, different body sizes could be advantageous. The survival of species was shaped by life cycle conditions. Many insects passed through several stages before reaching adulthood. Young insects hatched from eggs, fed and grew, and then transformed into adults. Every stage of a giant insect's life hinged on the food that was available and the conditions of its surroundings. Natural shifts, droughts, floods, scarcity of nourishment, or the presence of predators could interrupt any single phase, and a single break could cause the whole population to shrink. During their growth period, these enormous insects demanded abundant resources. The youngsters required sufficient sustenance to build their bodies, and when food was lacking, fewer individuals reached maturity, leaving too few adults to ensure successful breeding. As the environment changed, meeting these needs grew ever harder. In the earliest phases, many of these colossal insects relied on freshwater habitats. For instance, relatives of the strikos spent their youth submerged before emerging as winged adults. Alterations in rivers, lakes, or swamps struck directly at this development. If the water became excessively warm, too cold, shallow, or vanished altogether, a large share of the juveniles could not finish their metamorphosis. From time to time, the planet's climate was reshaped by volcanic activity. Huge eruptions spewed ash, gases, and other materials that could modify weather across vast regions. Layers of volcanic ash sometimes extinguished plant life, and the resulting loss of vegetation rippled through the animals that depended on it. As species adjusted to the new conditions, food chains were rebuilt, and giant insects living near the affected zones faced extra challenges as their habitats transformed. Over millions of years, the drift of continents played a crucial part. The once continuous landmass gradually split into separate continents. When massive plates collided, mountains thrust upward. Where they pulled apart, oceans opened where land had been. These tectonic shifts altered wind patterns, the distribution of rainfall, temperature regimes, and ocean currents. Climate changes reshaped habitats, breaking up the extensive, interconnected regions that giant insects once roamed into smaller, isolated populations. Small, secluded groups were far more prone to disappearance because deteriorating local conditions left almost nowhere suitable for them to settle. The evolving outlines of the continents also reshaped where plants and animals lived. New ecosystems emerged while old ones faded. In some forested zones, the canopy expanded. In others, it retreated, allowing grasslands to spread across areas formerly cloaked in trees. Insects had to keep pace with these shifting landscapes. Species that could not adapt over many generations gradually lost their foothold. The fossil record confirms that many groups of giant insects vanished slowly, not in a single instant. Different lineages declined at different moments, some persisting longer than others, depending on the habitats they occupied and their capacity to adjust to local conditions. Ancient rock formations preserve clues that help scientists trace this gradual process. Fossils reveal alterations in body size, wing architecture, feeding strategies, and geographic distribution across successive epochs. Researchers examine fossilized wings, body fragments, trace marks, burrows, and preserved residues to extract vital information. By studying the surrounding rock layers, they determine the age of the finds and reconstruct the environment in which these magnificent insects once lived. Recent research is shedding light on why the huge insect species have become scarce, while the smaller ones continue to flourish. The disappearance of the large forms didn't signal a decline in insect success overall. In fact, insects still inhabit almost every land and freshwater setting. A variety of new lineages have arisen, each gaining traits that helped them endure shifting conditions. Some evolved into superb flyers, others developed strong jaws, tough outer shells, or specialized mouthparts for particular diets. Many insects have formed close associations with plants, fungi, and other animals, enabling them to survive in habitats that have transformed over millions of years.